Hello everybody, Assetto Corsa EVO. I've not actually driven the game because all I did was spend 30 minutes pressing the throttle pedal when it was just released. So now it's been updated, I've updated my drivers, I can get a solid 100 plus FPS now. Input lag is low, it runs well, so I can properly actually drive it now with 0.4 and just do my first lap, see what it's about. This will not be a sort of a prepared video, these are literally my impressions as I'm doing my first hour or so of driving. And we'll see what I feel. We'll make some changes maybe to the force feedback, to the game settings, to the profile on my SimmerCube. Just can I connect with these physics, force feedback and the game and whatever comes to mind. It will be really random, not well rehearsed or prepared. So if you zone out and you tune out and you do something else, I completely understand. Choosing to film this with my webcam, which is zoomed in because we only have single screen. Otherwise the game just doesn't run fast enough. Doesn't look amazing, but I want my steering wheel to be here so you can sort of be with me a bit more when I'm talking about force feedback and letting go of the wheel to catch slides and stuff. You wouldn't be able to see that properly if I just did a game capture. So it's all a bit lo-fi, but just first impressions and everything that comes to mind I'll shout about. They didn't change the throttle model yet, so we still have that really slow response there, which is not really a huge deal, but it also plays a role on, we've talked about throttle long enough, they are aware of it, they haven't changed it yet, I hope they will, but it won't stop us from enjoying the sim because AC1 and R-Factor 1 and other games also didn't have the throttle model that I would like. So off we go then. I only did a lap to make sure the frame rates and stuff are alright and the frame times are consistent, and it does run quite nice. So let the randomness start. Cannot turn ABS off in this car. Maybe you can in the real car, if you get a circuit breaker out or something, I don't know. I'd like to turn it off, but alas. I wanted to do the F40 because I made an F40 in AMS1 and also played the one in AC1 quite a bit. But the F40 that's in AC EVO now is the Mega Ninja, holy crap, shitting my pants version, which I cannot compare directly. So we're taking the NSX, which I've made in R-Factor and played a lot and know a bit about. Should still have that 90s sort of vibe of being a bit, slow to respond, because of the tires having some sidewall, although it is probably the Type R, which is very stiff for a road car actually, so it shouldn't be too wallowy, shouldn't be super snappy race car, should move around a bit, should be controllable. I'm not wearing white socks, so that's a downside, and I've heard something. So this is just to drive the point home how random. Listen to the curb sounds. With headphones, otherwise you won't hear. Okay, now this is going to be a a test. What did we hear? The curbs on the left come 100% from the left channel, as far as I can hear. Curbs on the right come 25% from the right channel. And we do this in AMS1 as well. And I talk a lot about AMS1 when I complain about all these other games, and you might get the idea. 25% right, 100% left. So you might get the idea that I think AMS1 is perfect. It certainly isn't, and I will make a video about all the flaws in AMS1, which are many. But this is sort of a literal-ish stereo interpretation of the environment. And I really dislike that in AMS1 and here as well. I think it's not natural. So we've not even driven on the limit yet, and already I have just something that, I notice. Is it huge? Is it important? Well, isn't it strange that in a way you can understand? I'm on the right side of the car, so the curb on the right is closer to my head than the curbs on the left. However, this is not an anechoic chamber. We're in the real world, we're inside a cockpit. Sound is going to bounce around, so it is impossible, literally impossible, to be in a vehicle and hear the road noise and the tire sounds coming 100% from the left. That's just not possible. So It's a minor gripe I'm having with AMS1. I just noticed that the other day I'm doing a car and it drives me nuts. And I'm surprised that it's here as well. So I'd like them to rethink like the stereo separation. Stereo is great. And the VTEC has some like stereo spacing. There is a bit of roominess, like stereo-ness in the audio, not that much. The wind noise and the road noise seems to be mono almost. And yes, this is random, but it's surprisingly immersive if your road noises and your wind noises are stereo sounds that sort of fill in your head like a 3D. It isn't 3D, but it feels like it fills a 3D space if you have a nice stereo sound for everything, including the engine and everything. So some of the sounds feel a bit mono, and then the stereo separation for the curbs is not realistic in my opinion, because sound doesn't come from a single point in a car. Right, now that you've left, you've clicked away, how about doing some driving? I'm very happy to see that the input lag is very low. And you get that sort of whoosh under the bridges. That's kind of nice. I don't know how much you hear it, and then it's sort of offset by the curbstone sounds. Will I complain about the curbstone sounds for an hour? Probably. And I'm using a sequential shifter, so that means you don't have to take my word seriously, because this is not the proper way to drive the car. Oh, I'm seeing a good thing though. The ABS comes on quite early. You may remember that a gripe I have with well, still some games that exist today, but also with AC1, is that it's understandable, and we do this in AMS1 as well. The strength of the brakes is on the weak side. And if you go back in time when you had like a G25 very weak brake pedal, it's very easy to apply too much input and then you would lock a tire, for example. So it was sort of common practice, and is kind of still common practice, and in AC rally we also have the issue that the brakes are set up so that you cannot lock them with giving 100% input, and I'm firmly against that. I feel braking is a skill, and 100% pedal input should always lock the tires pretty quickly. So it is important that your brakes on the car, the physics, they are strong enough to lock the tires. And sometimes in AC1 with some cars you can press 100% and you barely activate the ABS because the brakes themselves are so weak. But seeing the brakes come on here, let's just do a bit of a test here. Look at the ABS. Yeah, it's coming on, and I'm at like 2/3, 3/4 of pedal input, and the ABS comes on. So I hope that is consistent for all the cars, because that is major, really major. And I also wish that, well, you know, it's a game, you can play it as you want, but I feel the default settings, the default brake strength in a car setup, and the default way a sim is shipping, it should have brakes that lock up at like 75%-ish, 85%-ish pedal input. So if you press 100% and then half a second later you will have the square-ish tire. So that's very good to see. Shame we cannot turn the ABS off. Maybe we'll try another car. So as I'm doing this BTCC car for AMS, which will be out in a week or two for you to try, and by you I mean nobody, because nobody's playing AMS1 anymore, but hey, I am playing with the sounds a bit as well. So I'm definitely not a sound guy, but I do have an ear too, in fact, and I feel I have a reasonable idea of what I want the game to sound like. I don't have the ability to make it sound like it. But let's see what happens here if we go real fast. Look, listen to the audio, to the levels. I don't think there was as much as like a decibel, but you have to analyze the recording, of increased noise as we went from 100k to like 250 kilometers an hour. I find it very important to use all the senses in a game, because we are sort of deprived of our buttocks feel in the sim, and we have to get our sense of speed and feel of what the car is doing through the force feedback, mainly through the graphics and also through the sound. And when you're moving the air out of the way in front of the car at 250 kilometers an hour versus 100, the energy that requires and the noise it brings with it is quite huge. So it makes sense from a literal point of view, but also from a gameplay point of view, to have more cues for the car speed in the sound that it makes. So I really like a stereo wind noise to really ramp up. And meant to do that. That took a while, but okay. And in AMS1, in rFactor1, the wind noise comes up progressively because the wind resistance is non-linear with speed. So if your speed doubles, the wind resistance quadruples. And that's the way the wind noise works in rFactor1 and AMS1. So you don't really hear it much doing 60 miles an hour or 100 kilometers an hour. But when you do 250, you can really make that wind noise ramp up, and it becomes a really immersive, sorry, but also very useful sense of speed, because especially now with a single screen, there isn't a huge sense of speed because of the field of view that I'm using. And having that audio immerses you and also tells you how fast you're going. And here it is, looking at the meters in OBS, it seems to be pegged at the same level. I like dynamic range in the game sound. It's just immersive, but it also helps you control the cars a bit better. Oh. And a bit better car control is probably what I need. Okay, let's do a bit of driving. I've complained about the sound now. Force feedback so far feels quite smooth. And we will look at the settings later. I've got basically everything off, just the basic forces, nothing like fake, no of the vibrations and stuff. I'm only running a bit of damper in my SimuCube software because inertia of this big rim is quite high already. I don't think we'll need inertia to tame it. 10 Newton meters is what I've set it to. And we seem to get no... I'll have a better look later, but we're not that far from clipping. A little bit maybe. I don't know if this car, it probably had power steering, and I don't know how they simulate that, but force feedback is of course a whole topic. It's like those sausages aren't even there. That's interesting. Force feedback is of course a very interesting and hotly debated topic. And maybe if the real car has a very numb feeling power assisted rack, the realistic thing you could argue is to have a really numb feeling rack in your simulator, but we are already missing sensory inputs from the rear end and your brain and everything because we are not there. So in a rare case, I'm actually with gamer muscle on this one, that force feedback. Oh, that slide is not stopping, and that's not... Okay, I'm a bit surprised there that I'm completely alright with messing that up, and it's sliding, but it sort of went on and then went the other way. Wasn't very snappy, but haven't Haven't driven properly yet. So I'm completely alright with force feedback not being realistic from the physics sense, simply because we are not in a realistic scenario. We are trying to replicate realism. In AMS1 it's really simple. We have no option to do power steering or any of the sort of filters like that. We just get the raw forces from the physics, which is very responsive and direct and actually gives you nice control, I feel, over what's happening. But then if you have a better modern sim and you have power steering, what do? Do you make the force feedback more numb because it's realistic? Or do you think, well, this is a game and we are struggling to connect to it because we are not actually in the real car? Let's use this expensive, high-end, capable of detail motor that we have to give the player the detail so he can control the car. So I'm completely with Gamer Muscle this once. That force feedback, there should be the literal option, just do whatever the real car has, and if it has a numb steering feel then the sim has it as well. But it makes real sense to me to have settings for the force feedback that inform you more about what the car is doing. So far it feels super smooth. Maybe this is an area where it differs already from maybe AC1 and AMS1, because without any filtering in AMS1, for example, it feels like there is sand in your steering rack. And maybe in the physics there is a little bit of filter, or there is a little spring damper somewhere in between the wheel position and the steering position. It feels really smooth. And we are, see, my wheel is now a bit slow. So the ramp up of force is a little slow off center. And my wheel struggles to fix my issues for me. And I don't think I'm getting a huge amount of clipping though, that seems alright. But I'm fairly close to clipping. So let's change the in-game gain a little bit. Menu is a bit, I don't know how people sort of make these UIs. It doesn't always feel very intuitive, but it's not the most important thing. SimuCube settings, steering lock. Let's make it a little less. 66. Maybe that gives us a bit more headroom before clipping. Oh, by the way, we can see my settings here, controls. So it's weird that here I have keyboard and mouse selected, and then the settings are still the FFB settings. So these are not part, nah, it's weird. Anyway, so no dynamic damping, zero minimum damping, no damper gain, no audio based effects, no curb effects, no road effects, no tire slip effects, which is a, yeah, what are these? So damper rule, minimum damper is just some damping, but I've applied damping in my SimuCube software. Damper gain is probably as you go faster, maybe, I don't know. There's more damping. Damping is something, well, we may experiment with it, but I want the wheel to be reactive at first, and maybe we have to, you know, tone it down a little bit. Audio based, it's just like, I don't know, probably some like noise and vibrations and rumble. I believe curb effects are just like sort of a shake. Sorry, a bit of coffee today. When you're on the curbs. Road effects as well, a bit of road noise that probably amplified. Tire slip, I believe that is some sort of vibration you get when you understeer. And rumble effects, oh no wait, this is gamepad stuff, ABS and tire slip. So all these are zero, but I think what that means is just the regular, like a rack force is what remains. That's what I think. I got 10 Newton meters on my SimuCube now. It's fairly light. Okay, I don't think we're clipping now. We weren't before, but now we are quite safe. Yeah, so a lot of the sounds, they feel mono to me. Whereas I'm in this tiny apartment, not a race car, so it will be somewhat damped, but I feel there should be more stereo in all the sounds. Let's try to induce some slides. I feel a little bit of road detail in the force feedback. Which is nice, I think that's fair. I don't think you feel a lot of that really. I've only played a couple of laps. I'm sort of already expecting, based on what happened a couple times, that the rear might come out a second time. This is literally my first laps, while also complaining about the sound and stuff, so I'm not concentrating that hard. Let's actually just drive for a few laps. Out of the hairpin there, it sort of drove fairly neutrally, very low force feedback there. That chicane is a real difficult thing in AMS1. I think the sausages are too large. Back it in. Where do we brake? I see that ABS light come on nice and early. I think that's great. Makes me, wish we could turn it off. So I feel my steering is not responsive enough, but I do like the torque I'm having. So let's see what we can do about that. So it is really smooth, so I think I'm going to try to remove the reconstruction filter. This is one of the best filters in the Simulcube. I'm still using old software. The reconstruction filter is great for like sand in your steering rack feeling games. But here it's very smooth, so maybe we can turn it off. The wheel struggles to keep up, so maybe I need a bit less damping. We'll see, I don't know. And otherwise, we don't use any of these direct input effects at the moment, I think, but let's just turn them off as well in case there is something. It says damping is active. That's interesting. Well, turning this off should mean that the game no longer has any control over the damping, unless it calculates its own damping, but it's difficult to put damping in the force feedback signal. What games can do is just have like a damping that is running on the wheel instead. That's what this is. So let's try that. A bit less damping, so hopefully the steering wheel is a bit more reactive and helping me a bit more with my mistakes. And let's not look at this screen anymore. This will go wrong at some point. Are you still here? I don't know why. This is a very the type of video, okay, what a huge difference that reconstruction filter makes. A lot more detail is coming through. It's not helpful detail, you know, it's more the high frequency stuff. But it's still really quite smooth. So this is just a difference between how games do it, and I think the way the physics are programmed, there is a bit more filtering on the force feedback than in R Factor 1, AMS1 and maybe default AC. I don't know about AC. I do like that the curbs, you feel them a little bit, but they don't rattle too much, which I don't think they would. Surprising sausages here. Always with road cars, the gearing isn't amazing for the track. Second feels a bit short at times, and third is a bit too tall. Okay, let's see if we throw it in. I'm very apprehensive still, as you can see. I'm not trusting the wheel or the physics or the game yet. The problem when you remove damping is there can also become like a disconnect between the wheel and the game, where it doesn't smoothly get into the new position, but starts to wobble a bit. Oh, the gravel grabbed me a bit. Pitch it in. Okay, but now it reacts too fast. And that could be a bit of an issue because I want it to react fast. And it didn't before it felt, and now it reacts faster with less damping. But it still feels a little muted off center. Maybe it's their choice if they did, and if this car has power steering, that there is some mutedness in the rack. Oh. I'm not at home yet at all with the driving. Let's just let the wheel do it. We need a skid pad. Probably doesn't have one. If I do this test in like AMS1, it snaps to center. And here you see this. Oh, that hurt. Oh, somehow something happened and my steering wheel isn't straight anymore. There is a reluctancy around center that I'm feeling, which I don't know, maybe that is deliberate because that is power assisted steering, whatever they think it is. But it means I have to do all the work, and actually the secret is I have no skill. I have an expensive direct drive wheel, and in AC1 or AMS1 it can really help me out. So this feels a bit weirdly disconnected. If I'm just speculating because because I'm not the developer and I didn't program this, but I got the same idea with AC Rally, that the force feedback doesn't ramp up fast off-center. And in real life, without the power-assisted steering rack, because I guess power-assisted racks can do anything they want. The great feature about tires is that when your tires need to be at a certain slip angle to generate the most grip, but the force feedback, the self-aligning torque as it is called, it ramps up roughly twice as fast as the grip. So when you're still barely gaining grip by steering more, by getting more slip on the tires, the force feedback part of that tire is already way up there. And that means on cars without power steering, at least, off-center, the steering is very snappy. It wants to snap back to center. And here it's sort of very wobbly, and I'm using so little damper now. So if this is, it's a bit of an old school tire, so maybe the peak, even if the peak slip angle is like 10 degrees, maybe it's like 8, but let's say it's 10, then the peak force feedback is probably at 5 degrees already. It's all a bit simplified and it depends on the geometry and on a lot of things, but it almost feels like the self-aligning torque, just as in AC Rally. Either it's not ramping up fast enough, that peak of that force feedback is too late, or it is their simulation of power steering perhaps, but this non-snappiness, this vagueness off center makes it hard, because if I'm in a... well, let's fail it once more. That was at least a creative way to destroy some tires. Also, there is no force feedback on standstill. That's just as in AC Rally. I'm surprised. This is, you know, we had this in rFactor 1 with Real Feel when it got merged with Leo Bodnar, who made one of the earlier direct drive wheels. Although actually, it was not Leo Bodnar just by himself. There was a German whose name I forgot. Sorry, he was also involved with the firmware and the first open sim wheel. He probably did most of it, but early days for force feedback. But Leo Bodnar made a parking lot force feedback thing for rFactor, where you got this nice rubbery feeling when you stand still. So it is surprising that a sim nowadays, like 15 years after, doesn't have any force feedback when standing still. You would expect some rubbery, springy feeling. But I'm really struggling because that weak off-center force feedback. Now, how do I explain that? If you're, it seems a bit lazy overall, but still not damped. So, if around the center you don't get, let's say we don't get any force feedback around the center, and now we're going from this way a slide, and then we're going to the other way. Your steering will sort of pass through that center, and it's not really about the center of steering, it's more the point where the tires are following where the car is going, and changing from that, there isn't a lot of force feedback. But of course, when you're sort of drifting and sliding, your tires are always sort of near that zone of wanting to correct the steering for you. And the tires always the front tires want to point where the car is going, so it has to turn the force feedback for you as the rest of the car is going sideways this way and that way. The front wheels want to point there. And if the steering force feedback doesn't ramp up fast, it won't keep the tires pointing in the direction to correct the slide very well. And you have to do the work yourself behind the wheel. So instead of more sort of letting go, or not letting go like this, but just letting the wheel flow through your hands, so to speak. If it is sluggish to build up forces off center, it will be too late maybe to do the catching of the slide for you. Now, there are many videos you can find of people on track days in road cars getting exactly those tank slappers that we are getting here now. So there is definitely a point where force feedback might be too helpful and doing all the catching of all the slides in the world for you. So it's actually quite an interesting discussion to have, really, because modern direct drive wheels are so capable. At what point is the force feedback too good? Then again, we're not in the car, we are lacking sensations and G-forces. Can we allow the force feedback to be a bit better than it is in real life? So far I'm really struggling to maintain a medium slide. So when I've stopped my input, the car goes on for a very long time and it rotates a bit sluggishly. Now it is a bit of a large vehicle, this. Brilliant lap times. I also currently have the feeling that using the throttle pedal isn't too productive in the slide, and that's, well, we are coming back to the throttle model somewhat. It's a bit difficult to explain, you just have to watch my video where I use paint to explain the issue of the throttle model that is in the game. And it means that parts throttle isn't very helpful in this model, whereas in real life, if it is more like I think it should be, maintaining a sort of half a slide with 3/4 throttle is a lot more intuitive than with the throttle model we have here, where that 3/4 throttle doesn't behave the same, I'm going again, as I think it should behave. So the throttle pedal being sort of on-off almost in its response doesn't help. And the key to drifting and power sliding in, say, AMS1 is as much the throttle control as it is the steering. Because with the throttle, the more throttle you put in, the more wheel spin you get, the more the rear tires lose their cornering grip. So you can steer it with the amount of wheel spin as well as with the opposite lock and stuff you apply. And I feel in AC I had this as well, that it's quite controllable, but throttle doesn't play as much of a role in the control of the slide as maybe you would expect. But maybe in AC1 or in AMS1, because the force feedback is allegedly, I haven't played AC1 a huge amount, but if it's more direct off center and maybe unrealistic and it helps you catch the slides, there it is not a huge issue if your throttle is a bit binary, because the steering is maybe too helpful. So on the one hand the steering is too helpful, but the throttle is too hard, and the end result is, you know, a realistically hard experience. But maybe now the steering may even be more, I don't know, this car, maybe it's realistic, but the throttle still isn't. So now we've made a car that maybe is more difficult to catch because of a problem elsewhere. Now, I'm not completely blaming the throttle for it. And that's why I wanted to drive the F40, because it certainly doesn't have a power assisted steering rack, the road version anyway. Ooh, and once those slides start, you already sort of know that the next 1.5 seconds you will still be in that slide. In Aqua Minerale there, I've sort of been off-throttle into the turn. It's nice that it moves, because, you know, a mid-engined car lift off into a turn like that. It's nice you can get it to rotate. But once it starts to rotate at a certain speed, you know it will sort of continue doing it. And I've also only played ACC for 10 hours maybe, but it reminds me a little bit of the sort of sluggishness of the slides there. So I feel like in order to look like a half decently skilled driver, I should be more smooth and avoid it's a road car. Avoid the bigger slides, because I'm not in control of them. Force feedback isn't snappy enough off center. I like how you off-throttle that see, and this looks pretty good. This is a nice level of rotation. It feels a little bit like the car would do it regardless of my inputs almost. That's more like the binary throttle that did it. So when I avoid the slides, which is hard to do there. You see, the last couple of corners you would almost say, hey, I can drive a little bit. But I'm sort of staying away. Second gear. Staying away from the limit, because once the slides start, they are a bit long in duration and I don't feel in control as I want, but maybe it gets better over time. Another area about the sounds is, of course, the tire skid sounds and stuff. It depends heavily on the car, how much you hear. But this is also an area where, well, we are not in the real car, and it can be incredibly hard to feel the tire slip. I feel the tire skid sounds start a bit late. So I was really four-wheel, and that's it. Just I find I have to unwind that, but it went far out there. And maybe it is realistic for the tire skid sounds to start when you're quite sideways already, but it can also be a nice helpful cue if there is a scrubbing sound that starts below like critical amounts of slip. Even if it's not realistic. Because now I feel I hear the tire sounds are fairly on-off-ish. Their volume is another thing you can control. You can control the pitch of the tone of the sound of the skid sounds, and also the volume. And if you do that nicely, you can get some information out of it. Because maybe a very high-pitched sound is a locking tire, like a low-loaded inside locking tire, and maybe sort of a darker, scrubby sound is just, you know, the tire's getting to the limit. But you want that volume of the sounds to also be reflective of the amount of slip or the speed or something like that, so it can inform you more about the tires. Which I feel is one of those points where we all talk about simulators and being so realistic. Well, the fact is, of course, these are just games that try, just like AMS1 and iRacing, everybody tries to make it realistic, but it's just never going to be completely realistic. And then you have to ask yourself, is the end experience more realistic if we fake the force feedback a little bit, if we fake some of the audio a little bit to give the player more cues about what the tires are doing. And I feel I'm already sort of in trouble with the slip, and I'm not hearing the tires very much yet. It's hard to get that slide to not develop into a big one. And I feel like if I let go of the throttle a little bit, then I'm likely to lose the slide altogether. I have not practiced that enough, so maybe that is an area where a bit of more throttle control will help. I've been like a few turns and stuff, I've been fairly smooth and precise. But I'm sort of driving under the limit to avoid these never-ending, completely deliberate. Now, a road car, they can leave sort of enter a slip state and just stay there forever. So it's not necessarily that it's unrealistic for a car to slide for that long, I don't think. But I don't have to do as much to get it into a slide like that, and that's something I'm not too sure about. It's also a difference I noticed with AC1 versus AMS1, where we compared the F40 a year or two ago. That it took a lot more effort in my car in AMS1 to get it to slide, and on the skid pad in AC1 I could just keep the same throttle percentage and steer a bit more and it would enter a drift. Whereas in AMS1 I had to force it a bit more to go sideways with like a throttle impulse or a lift off, and I had to do more work to get it into the big slide. And here it seems a bit similar to AC1 in that regard. Just, you know, I've driven the game only a little bit, AC1 and this, that the big slide isn't far away from the small slide. And like that as well. Why did that continue to develop so much? Oh, he's too late again? No. Like that exit, it only stopped because I ran out of revs, I think. Otherwise it would have been a bigger slide. Let's shut up a bit and do a few laps, and I'll cut it out of the video, see what ends up after like half an hour. How good or bad can I get. It's a bit better. One more. Well, you see, I could sort of tame it down and avoid that state where I'm not in control. Which, it does remind me a little bit about the original AC as well, where the big slides tended to be a bit larger than I wanted. But here as well, it moved around nicely on the fast lap. But it sort of did that without being instructed to clearly by me, almost, it feels. So you have to be quite early with catching that otherwise very long slide, and you saw in Aqua Minerale there it worked. It was sort of a nice four-wheel, bit too much, but four-wheel-ish drift. And that's sort of a bit too much again. And I struggle to find that between the micro inputs, really smooth driving, where the car does move around, but it sort of decides how much it moves around almost itself. And if you're really smooth, the movements of the car are small and that's fast. It doesn't feel as much like I'm fighting to get the car to do it, to get the car to the limit. I'm sort of being really clean, trying to be clean, to do like a 202, which is maybe, you know, at least not 1,000,000% terrible. So I'm trying to be smooth with my inputs to avoid the slides that would otherwise happen 2 seconds later. Oh. That's a bit much. There's definitely... the car does move and you feel that. But I'm not encouraged to push. I'm allowed to push until 99%, but that's sort of fake pushing. It's not the same pushing as I want to do. It doesn't bring me as much joy, even though it feels sim-like for sure. That's how you do that. It's really difficult to put that into words, though. I feel a little bit of ACC and also some AC DNA, where the throttle pedal is difficult to use, and I'm not sure if that's even the throttle model itself or also the tires and the way the slip in this game works. So here it sort of really lazily continues a four-wheel-ish drift, but it seems like I've had nothing to do with that. Now that's not true, I've had something to do with it. It's a little, yeah, a little vague, not helped by the off-center force feedback being so not snappy. But let's try the Ninja Mad F40 now, see what that's like.